All right. Well, it is so great to see so many friendly faces and great names and friends from around the state. Um, and Kim, thank you so much for reaching out and you always do such a great job of planning ahead and making sure that everybody has what they need in order to be successful. So um, I just really appreciate the time that everybody is giving here on a Thursday afternoon in the spring. In a year after we, who I guess what I'd say is who would have thought that a year earlier that we would be so comfortable and used to this type of interaction with Zoom.
So
Um,
true. So
it,
true.
it's just been, I guess, a really interesting journey over this year. And so, as we're thinking about, I'm going to assume that a lot of you are in school full time and or have kids in buildings and that, that's really happening a lot across the state. For the Office of Public Instruction, all of our staff, or the majority of staff, are still working remotely from home. So I'm coming to you from my OPI office at home here in Helena, and it's kind of hard to imagine what it will be like when we're able to go back into our offices and meet face to face. So just, trying to think about what a difference a year makes, and then, the continued changes that we're all going through as we kind of work through what school looks like and what teaching looks like. And in particular, library services have been an area, I think, in this year that have been particularly affected by this change in how we work with kids who are learning remotely, or other staff members are who are learning remotely or working remotely. um, just so many challenges. And then here we are in March of 2021, and we're talking about new library media standards and technology integration standards. So more change, more work to do, certainly. But with the time that I have with you, I just wanted to, like I said, provide an overview and kind of walk through some of the changes and differences with the standards, help everyone know where to find that information, and then be able to answer questions that you might have related to what we share. So I'm going to close the poll, and
Thank
Kim,
you.
I'll be able to provide those responses
Okay, great.
uh, back to the group here. I'm going to load those really quick. Do, 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 do. And that way I can just send you a spreadsheet basically with those responses.
Thank you, Coley. That was awesome.
No problem. Like I said, I learned more about online meetings and Zoomy tools than I ever even knew I would be wanting to know. Um, and there's so many cool things about Zoom, actually. Um, so I'm going to share my screen here and kind of rearrange. I don't know about some of you folks, but I work with from 3 screens. And so that's awesome, but then sometimes you have to reorient yourself when you start sharing your screen. So I have this brief overview for everybody, and we're going to talk about library media and technology integration. If you haven't already, it's sometimes nice to rename how your name appears in the participant list, just so you put your school or your community next to it, and that helps me kind of know where across the map everyone is coming from. If you'd like to do that, great, much appreciated. Please do use the chat to prompt any questions, and that way it'll give us a way to map back to any questions that we don't answer in the course of sharing information here. And I think those are all of the kind of Zoomy protocol things. I'm gonna actually go to our guiding questions. And again, I wanted to talk about what are the standards and where do you find them? What are the timelines for implementing new standards? and then just a brief overview on what's new or what's different from the previous standards. And along with that, as Kim mentioned, we have actually 5 new sets of standards that will go into effect soon. Those include career technical education, computer science, which is completely new to Montana. This is the first time that we've had those standards before. Of course, library, media, information literacy. We have technology integration as well as social studies. And so hopefully some of you were able to join Mike Jetty and Zach Hawkins a month or so ago with the professional development around those social studies standards, but more to come on that, and some really great connections actually across all of these standards that relate to information skills, problem solving, and many of the rich opportunities for learning that are really highlighted in the new library media standards. So important to note, what does it mean when we have new standards? There's actually a timeline, and the Board of Public Education adopted the new standards back in November. And when that happens, standards don't go into effect until the July following a legislative session. So we have a legislature going right now. And so July 1 is when the new standards will be actually published officially in the Administrative Register. And so right now, the work that you're doing, the work that we're doing right now is to understand what the new standards are, and then to begin to put together your plans for when you would update your curriculum to match those new standards. Be planning for professional development. We had our poll looking forward to next year to see what we might want to do to support professional development. We have to look at a curriculum review schedule, and often, well, in all cases, a district board adopts a timeline for when standards are reviewed. And so just knowing what that is for your district, and I think, you know, the majority of you are fairly well in sync with when you might be looking at new standards for each district. But this is the time to know when that review would happen, and then what kind of curricular changes might be need to be in place, or certainly any instructional materials that would need to be identified. And so with that being said, knowing what that district schedule is for reviewing and updating curriculum, there really is a 5-year timeline for implementing the standards. And so that's why you see June 2026 as that outside date. And so as districts look at that schedule and allot professional development time, have a chance to really dig into what the standards are and how that indicates changes in the curriculum, you really have that longer time frame for figuring it out and, you know, implementing that curriculum. So we don't need to feel like we're on the fast track to having everything in place by July 1. July 1 is when the standards actually go into effect. And then we have that 5-year kind of planning and implementation cycle that we can use to our advantage when we have so much on our plate. We're returning to normal next year, right? If we aren't as close to that as we might be right now. So I just wanted to pause and just really emphasize that it's not a fast track. It's a measured and thoughtful track that really is driven by your district processes and the resources that you have to update your curriculum. Any questions about that?
I will just throw in, for those of you that are librarians, I will be having a librarian Zoom for you next fall. I got some names from Colette and another lady to reach out to. I'll be contacting them early next week. So you will have another refresher event. And at that time, we will go over helpful articles to read, good websites, if the model curriculum guide is ready, and any questions. So as you're working with these new standards, when questions come up, you can shoot them to me right away. And if I can't help you, we'll get a hold of Calais, but you will have another shot at this. And then for those of you that are here for the new technology integration standards, there will be an event for you via Zoom after school this coming fall as well. So I won't leave you out, and I'll advertise it like crazy. And we have a question for you, Calais. I'll watch the chat for you.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Let's see. All right, so I'm gonna go to this next step, which is, so we have these new standards. Where do I actually look at them? And Kim, I wasn't sure if you'd already shared the spreadsheets with the group, but
yes, everybody has a copy, but I haven't taken them here.
Okay, sounds good. So on the OPI website, there's a page called K12 Content Standards and Revision. When you hover over the Educators tab, let's see if I can make this a little bit more visible. When you hover over the Educators tab, a drop down will give you a menu, and then this K12 Content Standards and Revision is the page you want to look at. So for each of the content areas, and notice there are these 11 sets of standards. Then you click on the corresponding area that you'd like to learn more about, and it takes you right there. So I'm going to actually stop sharing for a second so I can go to the live web page. Hopefully everybody can just see the screen there. Thumbs up if you can see Elsie's smiling face. And okay, excellent. That some of the you know how Zoom updates sometimes. I think there was a recent update, so the sharing settings are a little bit different from 2 days ago when I did a bigger meeting like this. So interesting. All right. So as I said, you hover over the Educators tab, and under Teaching and Learning, you see K12 Standards and Revision. Here's Library Media. There's a bunch more cool stuff at the bottom of the page. And what you see right now is pretty minimal. So we have the new standards, and right now I just have a spreadsheet version that's posted for right now. And then we have the previous standards from 2008 still posted here, just if you want to do some comparisons. Then we also have a few resources listed here. Hub courses, the Teacher Learning Hub, and then upcoming opportunities. And you know, certainly through Kim, you're going to have direct access to those specialized and individualized events that will happen through PVCC. As other things come up, those are posted on our professional learning opportunities portal for the OPI. So Kim learns about other things, and I know she shares that information with you directly as well. But back to the information literacy library media content standards, you can download that spreadsheet at any time from this page. And then as we get closer to July 1, we have some staff members who are working on more information and different versions of the standards document. So as we get those finished, we'll be posting grade level documents with the standards. We'll publish a model curriculum guide on this page as well. And so as we work slowly through those document creation processes, we'll post those right here on this page for you to look at. And the other thing I would say too, you know, I'm going to guess some of you at least are familiar with the Three Big Ideas newsletter. As those documents are posted, we'll feature that information in a Three Big Ideas newsletter as well. I know lots and lots of folks are waiting for the model curriculum guides for all 5 of the sets of standards. And so staff is working on building out more resources that are going to be part of those documents as well. Let's see here. And give me the thumbs up if you still see the presentation. Okay.
I see the OPI website. Is that the page you want up?
Nope.
Okay.
Let me try that again.
Okay.
Okay. Let's try this again. So this is where we find our state standards, and the same path exists in the same pattern for the technology integration standards as well. So just a little bit of background and context. Why do we have new standards in 2021? And that is something that happens periodically. It doesn't happen on like a 5-year schedule in the way that districts review their curriculum on a 5-year schedule. So for both library media and technology integration, those standards were last adopted or last changed in 2008. So here we are a few years down the road. And it was time to revise those standards. And so what is the same, regardless of which set of standards we're looking at, is that the Board of Public Education sets these expectations about defining what students should know and be able to do. So not just knowledge, but skills as well. That we have standards that are challenging and rigorous, that they are as clear and understandable and free of jargon as possible. And those of you who have participated, and I think I see Kendra and some other folks that have participated in these standards writing activities in the past, we love our jargon as educators. And so sometimes putting that hat or that lens of, is this going to be understandable to the general public, to parents, and to even students, that's a real challenge in this writing process. So we want to make sure that the language is as plain as possible, but that it's also measurable, that we can develop curriculum, that we can develop activities that we can use to understand how well students are meeting the expectations that are in the standards. And then we really approached the integration of Indian education from a broader perspective with this last round of standards writing. And so there's some subtle changes in how that's included, particularly in technology integration, but more explicitly in the library media standards, as you'll see, or as you've already seen. And then you'll also notice, and I'll show this a little bit more specifically, that there are individual grade level standards, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have grades 6 through 8 banded and 9 through 12 banded. And so that really matches the pattern of all of the standards that have been adopted since 2011. So actually the only remaining set of standards that haven't been switched over to that format are the world languages standards. And those are in the next revision cycle a couple of years down the road. So that's kind of, the criteria and a little bit about the why we have new standards. As I mentioned, the last set of standards for technology integration and library media were adopted in 2008. Is actually the first project I worked on when I came to OPI in 2007. I think I'm up to 13 revision activities that I've been part of over those years, which is amazing to consider. But with anything, we have to look at what's updated, what new sources we can look to, what are the changes in thinking or practice or philosophy that guide what's important in each of these content areas. And in particular, for K5, you know, you're familiar with the current standards that have the benchmarks at 4th grade, 8th grade, and upon graduation. And so, you know, these new standards really reflect that clarity of end of grade level expectations across the primary grades. And then it still opens up that flexibility for how and when the standards are integrated in 6th through 8th grade and high school, because we know those schedules and those approaches to teaching and learning are different as we move up through the grade levels. And then, as I mentioned, that kind of different integration of Indian education for all. I'm not going to beat a dead horse with this, but the American Association of School Librarians published new standards in 2017, I believe. And so that was something new that that really informed what the new standards look like. And then there's just a couple of subtle differences in the accreditation rules for library media programs, and we can take a look at that in a little bit too. So for library media, in 2008, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 standards. And in 2021, those standards are expanded. So there are 6 main overarching standards. And then as you've looked at the documents, you see that the individual grade levels have those learning expectations that build toward these kind of overarching statements as well. And so where you see some things that are, I'm trying to characterize this the right way, and Kendra, you can help me out too if you want to. But the new standards really emphasize and kind of broaden the description of what it means to have information problem solving skills. But it was also really important to think about perspective. So you see the terms broaden perspectives, and you also see the separate references to the you know, emphasizing diversity in learning communities, and very specifically for Montana, that's, you know, our unique cultural heritage of our native peoples here. I think, you know, in just a little bit different way, there's an emphasis on the safe, legal, ethical use of information, as well as calling out the importance of students developing the habits that allow them to exercise the freedom to read and demonstrate how they identify and pursue their personal interests. And so there's some different words, but really there's, I think, a strong alignment in terms of the skills and the emphasis from 2008 to 2021. So this is the library media, and I'm just going to check to see, are there any questions or clarification on those that you are interested in?
Don't be shy, everybody. This is your chance.
I don't necessarily have a question, but I just like how the new standards don't really, what's the word I'm looking for? They're not vague. Like the other ones I felt were very vague. Like it was very hard to kind of try to get what specifically you want. I like specifics. So I really like, I appreciate the new specifics where it lays it out a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree, Brianne.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that grade level specificity, and to see the development across the grade levels, like where are we, you know, where's our beginning point in kindergarten and working forward, I think is really powerful and really served a need that we've wanted for a very long time.
I've got a chat question and I will answer it for you, Calais, so you can keep going.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, those standards aren't that old, 2016. All right. So I wanted to touch on technology integration in kind of the same way. And much like the AASL standards came out in 2017, the International Society for Technology in Education also published new learner standards in 2017, and those had a good influence on the new standards and the changes from the last time. The other thing that is completely new, for whatever reason, in 2000 and 2008, we didn't go through the process to establish program delivery standards for technology integration. So that was part of this process, and I'll probably take you out to a different website to look at where those exactly sit. But I think it's really worth looking at, not just the learner standards, but also those program delivery standards, to think about, does our current technology integration curriculum and programming, does it match up with what these program delivery expectations are? So again, 2008, there were 4 standards, 4 overarching standards. And then it's not necessarily apples to apples when you look at the overarching standards for the new 2021 version, because the overarching standards really list the skills that students will be or do. Students will be empowered learners, they'll be digital citizens, and so on. And so when you look at the grade level standards for each of these areas, you'll see that they're associated with those overarching skills as well. So I'm gonna pop out of my presentation again. And I'm going to introduce you to one of my, hopefully it's not an introduction, but I'm gonna introduce you to one of my favorite websites, which judge me how you will, but this is the Administrative Rules of Montana webpage. And so when the Board of Public Education adopts these new standards, they are chiseled into stone up at the Secretary of State's office, and they are published in this register. So I mentioned both library media and the technology integration program standards. And so those standards sit in Chapter 55, which is the accreditation rules. And so if you want to go right, like I said, they're almost literally chiseled into stone. That's why standards don't change that often. It costs a lot of money to do this. You can come here and see what the official rules are for school programs. So forgive my scrolling. So in program area standards, there are standards for library media, and then technology integration is here at the bottom, as well as computer science. And I'm going to click on this, and when I looked, oh no, it's not there. So I know that they're working on adding the technology integration program delivery standards, but they probably won't actually appear until July 1. When I looked yesterday, I think they were actually typing these in and then hid them again. But what I can do is I'll just send that out to you when those are published. But it's really good to, as I said before, to take a look at these program delivery standards and just think about, okay, is this what we're doing already? Great, check. If not, what are some things that this tells me about either the conditions or the practices that we need to have in place for teaching these skills? So it's the same with library media. 1055-1801 are those library media program delivery standards. And let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more. They're the basic conditions and practices that need to be in place. And so, like I said, there are just a couple of small tweaks to this language about establishing scheduling, collaboration with classroom teachers and that, as well as just updating some language around digital resources, because the way that these standards are right now, it talks about telecommunications and electronic information systems, but those aren't necessarily current terms that we use. We're really about digital resources and online resources. So it's just something to look for there. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a quick question about that flexible scheduling. Are we saying then that the standard is flexible scheduling and that all schools should be moving to that, or fixed schedules are still okay?
So yeah, that's a good question, Kendra. And that's actually one of the changes is we took the word flexible out.
Okay.
Because how many, by saying that the condition or the minimum condition is that everyone would do flexible scheduling, we've known forever that that's not necessarily realistic, nor is it the most effective way to deliver the school library program. Sometimes you're better off when you have a fixed schedule and you have a guaranteed time with those groups or grade levels of kids. And so by taking out the word flexible, and just saying that they're establishing scheduling that ensures libraries respond, then that hopefully opens up the decision making to the district about what's best for them and how to deliver that program.
Right. I've always found that collaboration is more important than flexible or fixed.
Yes, yes, I would agree. And the new program delivery standards reflect that change in philosophy and thinking. Because I remember, when I went to library school 1,002 years ago, it was, if you aren't doing flexible scheduling, then you're not doing it right.
Exactly.
And that's really not the reality. It was never the reality when I was still in Manhattan as a high school librarian. And the emphasis was, for practical purposes and everything, about collaboration. And how do you find those ways to work with teachers and then work with kids around curriculum and supporting kids in pursuing their personal interests and making those discoveries of the things that they didn't even know that they were interested in. So absolutely. And I was really glad to see that that was something that was recognized in the changes to the standards.
Great.
Yep. So just to kind of reiterate, there is this kind of preliminary look at what the standards are. And I think also thinking about what your district timeline is. And so Kim, just I don't want to make an assumption that everybody is on the same schedule or right. Yeah. And so, if your board, I mean, it's hard to imagine making changes and with everything that your districts have had to deal with, but an update to your local schedule for reviewing curriculum is something that's really good information for you to know. So if your district has library media or technology on the slate to review this coming year, then you might be on a little bit faster track, right? But if your schedule, or if there's a chance to, work with boards and say, well, let's take a look at this and do our homework in this next year, and let's really engage with our peers through PVCC and do some good learning together, and then maybe the following year that's going to be the year to dig more into the curriculum work. That's not something that the OPI dictates in any way. That really is up to you when you want to take on that actual work of changing the curriculum. And you have that trajectory, all the way out to June of 2026 to make those changes and then start to implement on your own schedule.
And I'll build a little bit on what Colette is saying for you. So like I said, this coming fall, there will be another meeting for every content for all the new sets of standards. So there'll be 5, actually social studies is going to have 3 meetings over Zoom. Anyway, and what I've found, this will be my 15th year with Prairie View this fall, is if we don't take a year to provide professional development and to encourage the teachers to start teaching these new standards, it's really difficult to just pull you together this December and say, let's write a curriculum for the new library media standard, because you haven't taught from them long enough to get comfortable and well-versed enough so that we can build on a model curriculum guide, that OPI will be providing. So, I mean, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse if we try to develop a curriculum and we haven't taught from these new standards yet. So about a month ago, Colette and I had we took a pretty deep dive in a conversation, and we decided that we would review, I've got them labeled here, OPI, our Montana Social Studies Standards first, because they're so old. They're much older than the other 4 new sets of standards. Super, super old. OPI last reviewed them in 2000. So it's been 21 years. So that'll be the first one we'll review. Oh, Colette's pulling it up for you. So that'll be, I'm hoping, next spring of 2022. We will do social studies first. Then we decided, Colette and I, the next one that we would develop, the second one will be CTE. That'll be reviewed second. So that would be fall of 2022. Then third, we will review the library media information literacy. And I'm guessing that will also be fall, winter of 2022. And then in the spring of 2023, we will review technology standards, which we're talking about today. And then the computer science standards will be last. And Colette had a great point about why districts would want to do computer science review last. Do you want to share a little bit about that, Colette?
Sure. And so what I'll say is that if your school or district is already doing computer science instruction or coding in the classroom, and that I think that is really powerful. And so with the timeline that we're looking at with computer science, one of the things that came out of the standards revision process is that there's a big cost associated if you've never done computer science, K12, and fully implementing a program and a curriculum for computer science, K12. The estimate that we put together based on professional development and teacher preparation and instructional materials, all of these things, it came up to about $1.7 million. So that every single school in the state of Montana would have a baseline of resources, instruction, and professional development. And so that went to as a proposal early on in this legislative session, and the legislature said we can't fund that. So that being said, districts have to bear the cost if they want to move ahead with implementing computer science from scratch. And so really talking with your trustees and your building administrators, your school administrators about what makes sense for our district in terms of the cost of implementing computer science is something that you really have to plan for. Now, all of those cost estimates and everything that we put together and that went into this legislative proposal, like all of that was done before COVID and before these bags of money are falling out of the sky with ESSER funds and the CARES Act funds and that sort of thing. So, it may be that your districts are looking at ways that they can enhance learning opportunities, and computer science might be one of those things that they're able to move forward on a little bit more quickly with those extra federal dollars that are coming in. But really, ultimately, that 5-year review cycle and thoughtfully planning for the expenses of adding computer science was something that I felt it's important to emphasize, and having that review schedule take into account that this is not at zero cost to districts if you aren't already doing it.
Right. All right. I have 2 questions. We have a very pertinent question from Amy Griffin and Westby in the chat. And then after that, I want to have Jan Huseman. She had a question from Weeble. So we'll just over email yesterday. So we'll address Jan's question after that.
Okay.
So everybody check your chat here. Cole's going to find Amy's question.
Yes, that is an excellent question, Amy. And so on the computer science page, one of the things that we specifically addressed, especially early on when we were looking at the cost of implementing computer science, was the licensure implications. So for K, if you're a 0-0 elementary licensed educator, you can teach computer science. You can teach coding. There's no extra endorsement or extra licensure needed if you're a 0-0 elementary certified teacher. But it does get obviously more tricky in middle school and high school, if you're secondary endorsed. So all of the details about the licensure requirements, hopefully you can still see this on my screen, are on this computer science page. And again, if you already have a computer science endorsement on a secondary license, you're good to go. But the devil's in the details. If a course is being offered by your district that is coded with a course code that would require a CTE background, then you have to kind of work through that in terms of the course that's offered and then who can teach that. And that's definitely for your administrators to work through as you identify courses that would be taught at the secondary level in particular. So yes, I would say yes, absolutely. Business teachers have those competencies in their licensure and endorsement, but really look carefully at the kind of the fine details about course coding and the coding endorsement and the computer science endorsement as well.
Great question, especially for our really small school districts who may not have a business and technology teacher on staff right now. They need to be really beaten. We just had an administrators meeting this afternoon, and some schools are getting 2 applications, and they, for a new position, they've been advertising. So filling this could be a challenge.
It really could. And so, one of the things that, is an expense is the professional development or the credits. If you're going to get an endorsement, that doesn't happen for free if you're buying credit or taking credit from the universities. We do have a number of hub courses. Of course, those are renewal units. It's not going to help add an endorsement per se, but for anyone who wants to just kind of come up to speed on computer science skills or computational thinking or those sorts of things, there are a bunch of courses. And then under the professional development opportunities, there are actually a whole bunch of sponsored workshops and summer sessions that are coming up this summer that are sponsored by code.org. And then we're just adding as much here as we possibly can so that it's up to date. And the university, a couple of the universities, U of M, Salish Kootenai College, Montana Tech, and MSU have, they're offering these college courses as well that will contribute those credits towards an endorsement. So, you know, if you're interested in that, and especially secondary endorsed, there's lots of opportunities. And some of them, some of the, like the code.org, depending on when those are happening, some of those might even have stipend or travel support if they actually do them in person this summer.
All right, I want to make sure before we run out of time, we get to Weibo's question. And then I have a request for the attendees here today. So Jan, let me look. Are you still, you or Chris? It looks like you're both still on. So if you could unmute yourselves. Okay, go ahead.
I'm not thinking what question you're referring to
Oh.
because I ask you a lot of questions.
Okay, so there was a website that you could log into and create a username and a password to access something.
Yeah, that IMS Global, and I just got lost in it.
Yes, thank you.
Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Don't worry about that. That I pull the spreadsheets out of that. That's where we actually publish the standards also, so that we can then pull them out and create. So do not worry about that IMS Global login. I got you covered on that.
Thank you so much.
Cross it off your list.
Okay, I
Good.
will.
Your tech
All right.
director, or if you're Infinite Campus School or even Power School, there are ways that they can pull the standards out of that directly into your student information system or your learning management systems. But that's very much on the technical side of things rather than using the standards.
Okay, here's my plea to the teachers. I am having trouble, and you can see by our attendance today that we are really lopsided. We have a lot more library teacher educators here than our technology educators, which saddens me. And I'm having trouble getting the word out. And Colette, please correct me if I'm wrong. But if you teach in Montana, K through 12, if you're in a classroom, you are responsible for these new technology integration standards. Right, Colette?
Yeah, I mean,
Everybody.
they're very much, you know, universal standards.
Yes.
For technology integration.
Yes. So when you're having a potluck in your lounge, I'm hoping you can do that. Maybe with COVID you can't. I don't know what your individual schools are like. Your ag teacher probably hasn't read my emails that here's your new tech integration standards. And your music teacher and your art teacher and your Spanish teacher, everybody, if you're a teacher in a classroom, it does not matter what grade level you are or what content area you are teaching, you are responsible for these tech integrations standards. It's all hands on deck. Everybody that's teaching in a building. So please help me spread the word. If you're in a conversation with a colleague, please remind them they have new tech integration standards, and we can get them the recording to this meeting, and then they can also attend the PVCC event this fall. And I've sent them the standards, but that doesn't mean that they read my email or pay attention to that. So what else could we do to let folks know, Colette, that you are responsible for these tech integration standards too? It's not just Amy in her building in Westby.
Right.
So how can, and maybe teachers that are attending here, maybe you have some suggestions for us. Nope, everybody's tired. And so anyway, that's what I need from you. Tell the music teacher and the art teacher. Oh, go ahead, honey. Go ahead.
I would say you're going to have to get your administrators on board first and have them provide the carrot or the stick.
So true. And they've gotten the standards too. They get the same email invites that you do with the explanation of the implementation date. But no, you're absolutely right. I agree totally with you. Oh, thank you, Amy. So check your chat, folks. That's a grand idea. She's going to send a group email to her colleagues and let them know. And she's right. They'll read it if it comes from you. They get too many from me, and so they just are sick of me. But if they get it from one of their colleagues and the person that teaches in the classroom next door, they might. Yeah. Okay, so we have about 9 minutes. I've done a lot of the yapping. Eloise, Jasmine, Andy, what do you want to know? We've got Colette here. What could we help with? Nothing. Okay. How about Jesse and Rebecca, Colette, Nicole? Oh, there's Jasmine. Jasmine, do you have any questions? No? Morgan, Chris, Sandra?
Yeah, I have a question.
Good.
It's not, I don't know if you can really answer it or not, but that librarian class in the fall that you talked about at the beginning,
Yes.
can anyone attend that? Like, I am interested in becoming a librarian and I want to start the endorsement process.
Awesome.
Am I
Yes.
able to sign up for that in the fall?
Yes, 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 please, yes.
Okay.
Yes. We want, if you're a PVCC member, even if you're not teaching social study standards, if you have the time and you are thinking about getting an endorsement, hop on a meeting. These are all free for you. This is part of your consortium's benefit. So thank you for asking that question, because somebody else might have the same question. Kitty, we haven't heard from you. Kitty, Polly, Melissa?
Well, I'm the, tech person at Frontier. So for me to be able to only be the person to teach this technology, which somebody said it needs to come from our administration down, is totally true. Because I got these thrown at me when I don't know if it was a year ago, last fall or this spring or whatever, with my thoughts. And I just went, yeah, I can't do that and maintain 110 computers and classroom smart boards and everything. So we definitely, your comment about all teachers are responsible, all hands on deck, I think you need to send that exact email to the administrators.
Okay. I have a school administrators meeting in April, and I will send the message. And Colette has a question for Colette in the chat box.
Yeah, so Colette, I was just gonna see, at the different grade levels, there are references to citing sources. The standards themselves don't say you're going to learn APA in 5th grade or MLA in 5th grade. It really, the standards are a broad statement about students will appropriately cite or acknowledge sources of information. So at the curriculum level, that would be your decision. If you have a style guide or a particular citation style that your school wants students to learn, then that would really appear in the curriculum. And getting to that level of specificity. So hopefully that answered your question, but please feel free to speak up and let me know if I misinterpreted.
That's a fantastic question. And when we have our PVCC curriculum review, I hope you'll be in attendance, Colette, and we will get that put in our part of the curriculum work that we do. That's something that should be included. Great question. Okay, more questions. Oh, Polly, do you have a question?
No, I'd just like to tell you, I'm very lucky to have Kendra in my building, because Kendra's my push to keep me going when I think I'm not very good at technology. And she's my thank you, Kendra, and because she keeps pushing me to keep me going, because I'm not really good at this, but she's my backhand. So I'm very lucky to work in a building with Kendra. Very much.
We are lucky too. She's a pretty special lady.
Yes, she
So
is.
I second that. Kendra, aren't you feeling so happy right now?
Yes,
gonna
thank you all.
Give you more hearts.
I don't know if it's worth all that, but thank you.
hey, we have 4 minutes. Please, please, please ask some questions. Because
Well,
as soon as we hang up, you're going to think, oh, I should have asked about this.
Yeah, and if it would help, at this point, I'll stop the recording.
Okay.